Good day. Welcome to Westchester Talk Radio, westchestertalkradio.com. I'm John Marino. We are produced by Sharc Creative. We are made possible by Robeson Oil, the house that service built, by Michael Labriola, landscape design and construction of Armonk, by Hightower Westchester, managing your wealth to a fiduciary standard, and by Jaguar Land Rover of New Rochelle, White Plains, and Mount Kisco. And here on the Cup of Joe Political Show, we are joined by Westchester County Executive Georgia Latimer. County Executive Latimer, thank you for joining us again here on Westchester Talk Radio, midway through 2022, midway through the summer. We have another wave of COVID, wave 5, wave 6, regardless of what you want to call it. COVID is making a strong comeback. What's the reason for this as far as you can tell?
Well, I think, we don't know enough about the way this disease has been playing. It morphs and adjusts. And, I'm not enough of, scientist to be able to understand why it does that. I just know that it has changed. And what it has done is to continually make the infections of COVID a significant percentage of the overall population. As we're speaking right now, we have about 3,300 Westchester residents that we know of that have an active case of COVID infection. And the presumption is that you're infected for 10 days. When you test positive, a certain number of days you've had it at the point in time that you've tested, and you need to go through a 10-day protocol before you can go back out and operate, and in theory, not be communicable. But what I think is most important, even though the 3,300 number goes a little higher, it goes a little lower, but it doesn't really get down to zero, and it doesn't go back up to 10,000. So I think what we're watching now is sort of how we have to manage life in light of the fact that COVID is never going to go away from our mindset. Two important statistics to tell you, in addition to the total number of active cases. Right now, we have less than 5% of all the people that have an active case of COVID that are hospitalized because of it. So 5% out of 3,000 would be 150 people. And 150 people doesn't tax the health system as happened in the beginning of the pandemic. And while 150 people are not insignificant, only less than 1% of the people that have contracted COVID have died from it. And every death is every fatality is a tragedy. I don't want to minimize it and make it statistical, but less than 1% fatality rate means that the vast majority of people that get COVID recover from it, and the large majority of them never get hospitalized. So I think at this stage of the game, we operate on the basis that we make vaccinations available. Testing is extremely available now with home test kits. And you test. If you find that you have it, then you isolate yourself. If you don't have it, you go about your business. If you see you're in a very closed environment with lots of people around you, you wear a mask, but you don't have to wear the mask in comings and goings. It's not mandated. When you're outdoors, we've had a lot of outdoor activities, and we've seen no spike from COVID come from it. So I think we have to be intelligent and prudent, which we've tried to be the whole way through this pandemic, 2.5 years. And I think we will continue to manage it. I'm probably jumping ahead of myself here, but we have restarted our ethnic festivals at Kensico Dam. We've held about 5 or 6 of them already. We have our pools and our beaches are open. We have our various bicycle Sundays open, our golf is open, all the recreation. So we're not afraid to interact in the society. We just have to use common sense as we do it.
Are you worried that there might be yet another spike come fall when the weather gets cooler? Or like you said, is this something we're just going to have to deal with and adjust to from now on?
Well, I know it sounds like I'm playing with words. I can't say I'm worried about it because I know how we react to it. I'm mindful of it. And if we see the numbers start to spike up again, then we will have to do certain things that we're not doing right now to be prepared for. Generally speaking, in each of the last winters, we've seen the numbers rise as the weather got colder. People came indoors more, was more subject to the infection. We saw it in 20, we saw it in 21. I have no reason to think that we won't see it to a higher degree in 22. We had an Omicron variant this past winter, which at one point had 36,000 people infected at some point in time, even though it was mild infection. I was one of them. I had my 10-day COVID isolation. And frankly, other than going stir crazy, there was nothing wrong with my health. But I still had to, isolate myself. And a lot of people went through that. And as much as it peaked way up to 36,000, remember I said 3,000 lately, it dropped almost immediately after that. So do I think there'll be another variant? Yeah, I do. How severe it'll be, I don't know. So far, I think if people are vaccinated and they get the secondary, the additional shots that they need. I know people don't want to get shots. I've gotten 3 shots. I don't really want to get them, but you get them. It protects you. And then at least, if you do get it, like I got it, it's a mild case. You recover quickly or you don't get sick at all. And then you go on with your life, as opposed to the 2,750 people in Westchester County who lost their life due to COVID. Most of those people were either advanced age, underlying health disease, or just not vaccinated. Now, the other 2 areas you really can't adjust. I mean, you're the age you are, and your underlying health has evolved over years. But vaccination is something you can do something about. And so we continue to encourage people to be vaccinated, stay up to date on your vaccinations. That gives you the best chance of survival. A lot of people say a lot of things about vaccination. A lot of people say a lot of things about everything. But in this particular case, personal experience and medical science, getting vaccinated is your best strategy for COVID, and then be prudent in the way you live your life.
Have people pretty much gone back to a normal life around the county, or do we still see some trepidation? And maybe I could extend this a bit further. Have we gotten a little too lax with our protocols?
Well, I think, you're at a point where people are fed up with the restrictions that COVID created. In the heart of COVID, when masks were mandated, in some job areas, vaccinations were mandated. We never mandated our workforce or anybody to get vaccinated. We had a mask requirement inside the county office building, which is a controlled area, but we never applied it to the outdoor parts of county government, the parks and so forth. So I think we were very measured in what we did. We didn't do an across the board mandate. And I think people are tired of that. However, the virus is not tired of us. It's still there. It's there at some level. So I don't think we're back to normal, but we're getting closer to normal because I think people recognize, look, everybody's going to get this virus like the cold. Everybody's going to get it. Everybody's going to get the flu at some point in time. Am I protected against it if I've been vaccinated? Yes, it doesn't prevent me from getting the disease, but it makes it much less likely that I'm going to get sick from the disease or die from the disease. And at the end of the day, John, that's what we're trying to make sure. We want to make sure you don't die. We want to make sure you don't get severely ill. Stopping you from ever getting the disease may not be possible, but at least give a mild form of it. So you have it, you get over it, and you go on with the rest of your life.
Westchester County Executive George Latimer here on Westchester Talk Radio, the Cup of Joe political show. Here we are, summer number 2 now, without Indian Point. It's been gone since April of 2021. All the talk about climate change and everything going on. And we see weather patterns. They are shifting, no question about that. The lack of Indian Point, has that affected us power-wise this summer so far?
Well, at this point, we're speaking in the middle of the month of July. We have not had a sufficient heat wave to test the electric grid. There have been no brownouts, no blackouts. Is that possible between now and, say, the second week of September, which is the summer? Two of the 4 months or 3 months of summer have gone by. It's possible, and we might get to a point where the energy generation isn't sufficient, and we have to have blackouts or brownouts. But at this point, it hasn't happened, and it didn't happen to any significant level last year. When we've had loss of power, it's generally been because we have bad storms. We get a windstorm, it takes down power lines, and that's what knocks out the power. We know that we need more energy generated to compensate for the Indian Point situation. There's some discussion now about clean energy being trafficked into the county from different locations. But I have to tell you, every time you talk about siting something, siting a facility of some sort, or even transmission lines, people don't want it. And, if it's not in my backyard, it's not in your backyard, it's not in her backyard or his backyard, then where is it? And that becomes a fundamental problem about getting more energy into the area. I think at this point, we haven't been tested sufficiently to know if we can handle high demand and low supply. But, I don't know if we're just whistling past the graveyard, but for the moment, we're okay. And from a county standpoint, we don't control the generation of energy nor the siting of plants. That all is a state function within the State Public Service Commission. We know at some point in time, there's going to be additional need for power coming in. But at this point, we haven't reached the point you described, which is where we have insufficient power. We have been sufficient to handle the needs to date.
And this ties into the summer and what's going on with storm season being here. And some storms already have generated. Nothing has really come up this way yet up the coast. Are we ready? Is Con Edison prepared for this? And is the county too?
I'd have to say we're ready to the extent that we can be ready. We are not perfectly ready. Nobody is. If a category is 5, the very top level is storm. We know what Katrina was to New Orleans. If a Katrina hit the New York harbors head on, if the path of the storm, it went over water all that time, building up force, and if category 5 hit the New York harbor, no, we're not ready for that. The infrastructure improvements, we have a lot of things that are built at low levels. We have a subway system in New York City. We have low-lying houses and land, and a major hit by a hurricane like that, it would damage us. But for most of the circumstances that we have, we're in decent shape. Now, we saw with Hurricane Ida landfall in New Orleans, and then about almost a week later, it made its way over our skies, and it stalled, and it rained heavily within a short period of time, and that tested our water drainage system. And we had a rough go of it. We lost 5 people, and a lot of people were inconvenienced by what happened. So it depends on the kind of storm you get and when you get it, and what the track of an individual storm is. But in general, I think we are ready for most of the probable outcomes. We have good emergency service crews in each of the different municipalities. They know how to get out there, and get rid of an obstacle that's blocking transmission being reestablished. We have people that work around the clock, dedicated and smart. But a storm could come up in a certain way of a certain magnitude, and we might find ourselves, not being able to handle it. But I think in general, we're prepared as best as we can be.
Here we are in the middle of a major rise in inflation around this country, could be headed for a recession, and yet seems like you and the county have taken the lead in trying to help the everyday average Joe mom and pop deal with this, with the suspension of the gas tax and other measures like, for example, family wants to go to a county pool. A lot of the county pools now for the rest of the summer,
right.
No fee during the week. How are you able to do this? And from a financial standpoint, have the county be able to sustain and support this?
Well, financially, we are getting more revenue than we had budgeted for out of sales tax from all different categories. So even if we lift the sales tax on a category of products, we're getting an overperformance in the amount of money coming in. It's as if, I'm an hourly worker and I'm working a lot of overtime and I have more money to work with. So if my son comes to me and says, Papa, I need $20, or my daughter says, Dad, I want to buy a new dress, I have the money to do it because I have more revenue than budgeted. I budgeted revenue to pay the mortgage, to pay the car fee, and to pay the electric and the phone bill and so forth. But I have more money available because I've worked more time and I have more revenue. That's where the county is now. We have more revenue coming at us. So we are able to do things like suspend bus fares from June 1st to September 5th. We've been able to suspend the cost of going into a pool from July 1 to August 31st. We've made 2 of our paid lots, one near the White Plains train station, one near the North White Plains station, free parking lots. So if you commute out of either of those 2 stations, or you can commute out of those stations, you won't pay for parking the month of July. You won't pay for parking the month of August. We have put more money into our food pantries to deliver more free food for those who go to the pantries. It's not just the indigent that goes, working poor goes as well. And you can go. I mean, you could go and pick up a certain amount of food, and that'll cut down your food bill. So that's part of it. We've waived the civil service exam fees. So if you want to apply for a job within county government, you don't have to lay out the $100 or whatever it is up front. And we're on the cusp. We haven't finalized yet because it's got to go for the board of legislators. But we're looking at doing something that would begin in December that would lift the sales tax off of any energy sales, home energy sales. So oil, gas, whatever you might use to heat your house, you wouldn't have to pay the county portion of sales tax on it. So in other words, if you put $1,000 worth of oil in your tank, you would normally get about an $85 taxes on top of the $1,000 you spent. We would cut that in half, and we would pick up half of that cost through the program I've talked about. That's not yet in place. But the bottom line is we're working on that. We're taking a look at the community college rate structure. We've already cut taxes 3 years in a row. You covered that story a couple of times. And, we've also made a number of different efforts to roll back certain types of actions and fees. And when you add all that up, it's not the same as what a federal government can do, but it is what we can do. We recognize there's an economic issue, and we're trying to deal with it head on by making these things available.
And you've done a lot, obviously, but there's still be more still to come.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we're trying to be creative in every way we can. We want to keep it within that realm of what we can afford. We have no intention to raise taxes to afford this. That's just moving money from one pocket to the other. So as long as we think we can plausibly pay for whatever the good idea is, and I think we can in most cases, then it becomes a defensible situation. It gives people a bit of a break. Now, does it give them enough break if they can't find baby food formula? No. Does it give them enough of a break if their insurance costs are spiking? No. We don't control those. We don't regulate those things at the county government, but we're doing what we can in our lane.
County Executive George Latimer here, Westchester Talk Radio, the Cup of Joe political show. Supreme Court decisions a couple of weeks back. Everything trickles down locally from the Supreme Court. Lately, it seems, for example, obviously the controversial gun law in New York State decision and the abortion decision. Let's go with the gun law decision first. And, if I wanted to carry, a pistol on my hip right now, I probably could in the state of New York. And yet, I see the Supreme Court allowed an out to make doing this as difficult as we could possibly locally.
Well, in essence, what the Supreme Court said is that the right to carry, the right to possess arms from the Second Amendment is such an overwhelming right that it obviates any laws that have been passed. The Sullivan Law, which is what they overturned, was passed over 100 years ago. This is not a recent law. This didn't happen in the liberalism of the 1960s or more recent liberalism. The Sullivan Law has been on the books for a long time, which sets a high bar for you to carry a concealed weapon. And it comes down to what the interpretation of the Second Amendment is. Does the Second Amendment mean you have the right to possess arms? Yes, you do. What did possession mean in 1791? It meant you had a musket, and it was over the mantelpiece in your fireplace. When you went out hunting, you had the musket and you hunted. Or if you heard people rustling around your cabin late at night, you went and you got your musket to defend your family. A musket does not mean you go out into Center City, Philadelphia in 2022, where there's gunplay going on, or you walk into a bar where there's alcohol and all kinds of interactions that happen that can easily turn into angry and violent. But the Supreme Court, they have a conservative viewpoint, and, I don't share it. And I understand that people who are conservative love what the Supreme Court is doing. Those of us who are more moderate do not. But at the moment, they are the Supreme Court judges, and they ruled that the Sullivan Law, passed in 1911, is now unconstitutional. So the state government has come back and passed a set of laws that they think work around the decisions that were made by the Supreme Court, so just to stay constitutional. And of course, the gun owner groups are going to take it to court and try to test it again to see if that's constitutional. From the county government level, here's the bottom line. We understand completely the right to own weaponry. We do not believe in confiscating your guns and all that. In a world where there were no guns, that's a fantasy world in America. People own guns. There's more guns in America than there are people. So the only question is, what is a prudent gun control law? And I would argue that if you have reason to walk around with a concealed weapon to protect yourself or your assets, fine. And there has to be a reason, and that reason could be you're carrying large sums of money. You're carrying jewels. You have a security responsibility in your professional life. It can't be that, listen, I'm a free American. I want to walk into a park and have a gun on me just in case somebody starts trouble with me. And which could also be somebody just disagrees with you, don't like the way they look, and you start pulling out the weaponry and you turn into a bit of a bloody mess. We will administer whatever the law is as passed by the state. And if the Supreme Court overturns the new law, we will honor that. That's the rule of law. But I have to tell you that I think there's going to be a testing of the boundaries. How far do we want to go on this? And I do think that a responsible gun owner who can pass a background test has nothing to fear in terms of what we're talking about. You will have the right to possess and carry weaponry. It's the person who is, not right. And we've seen examples of it in Uvalde, Texas. We saw it in Parkland, Florida. We saw it in Buffalo, New York. We've seen it in so many different cities where the individual hasn't broken a law yet. They have a right to bear arms. They're the law-abiding citizen until they're not. But in the meantime, they grab a gun, they go out there and they indiscriminately shoot people, or the folks in the city who go ahead and do that. So I think, ideology has to take a back step to pragmatism. In this case, I think there should be reasonable restrictions on when and where you can carry a gun. And we'll see what the Supreme Court ultimately decides in the implementation of whatever has come out of the loss of the Sullivan Law.
Can we, for example, and we see what happened in Connecticut, in Newtown a decade ago at Sandy Hook, and one of the recent instances, too, where I guess the one up in Buffalo, where the kid from Conklin, New York, who had his father when he was a bit younger, 15, 16, buy him a gun. And Adam Lanza's father a decade ago in Connecticut, his father bought him weapons. Can we prevent that that if you want to buy what we call, straw buying, that if I want to walk into a gun shop and buy something, it has to be me that signs on to that purchase and not have somebody else buy that weapon for me and I go take it and do something I should not.
Well, the problem is you've got 50 states in the nation and there's 50 different sets of laws. And we here in New York live in close proximity to other states. And particularly, I lived in Northern Virginia. Northern Virginia to where, getting into New York State is in the vicinity of less than a 5-hour drive. And Virginia's laws are much more open. They're still basically in many ways a southern state. And you can go down there and buy an arsenal, put it in the back of your trunk, and drive into New York. You can sell it out of the back of your trunk in an alleyway somewhere in the city. You can give them out to your friends. And it's very hard for New York State to interdict that. The national legislation that's needed does not appear to have the possibility of passing. You have too many senators from too many small rural states, conservative states who believe that the right to hold a gun is inviolate. Keep in mind, the Bill of Rights gives you free speech, but it does not give you unlimited free speech. If you libel somebody else, if you say something that's not true about somebody else, you can be sued for use of your free speech. You have the right to free assembly, but you can't just go lie down in the middle of an intersection in any community you want. You have to go to the community, get a permit to be in this particular park to use your right to assemble. You have freedom of religion, but if your religion involves a ceremony where you cut the head of a chicken off, the zoning laws of the community says you can't poulter, chickens, in the middle of a residential environment. So there have always been limits to the way, common sense limits to the way you exert your rights. Because it has become so emotional and it is such a bedrock of the way some people feel, gun rights have superseded all of those rights, and gun rights in their minds are absolute rights under any circumstances. I want a gun, I can take a gun anyway. I can take it into the loo if that's what I want to do. And of course, that's not what I consider to be practical. But having said that, the Supreme Court has acted, and now my job is to figure out how to administer my county within the parameters of what the Supreme Court has allowed for and what they prohibited.
Is there a way to cut down the flow of guns, the iron pipeline, basically, from guns getting into New York City, getting into New Rochelle, White Plains, Yonkers, Peekskill, or at least slow it down, or is this just not possible?
Well, I think we've slowed it down in Westchester County. I think we have a top-notch county police force, and it works in harmony with the 40 local police forces. We think of the Yonkers, Mount Vernon, New Rochelle, White Plains police forces. They're the big cities. But there are 40 local police officers, and they work, I think, in a very good hand in glove with the county police, which is the regional police. I think we have been in the process in Westchester of slowing down the gun situation. Keep in mind, we have 1 million people in Westchester. Now, people think of Westchester, we were chatting about this on camera, from their perspective, in urban Brooklyn. No, Westchester is not urban Brooklyn. We're upstate in the minds of a Brooklander. But we have our urban centers. Yonkers is the 3rd biggest city in the state. We have the 7th biggest city in New Rochelle, the 9th biggest city in Mount Vernon, the 15th biggest city in White Plains of all the cities in New York State. But we don't have anything like the same level of crime. I mentioned before, crime is down in Westchester 20% between where we were today and where we were 4 years ago today. And the last 2 weekends, we've reported no shootings in Westchester, no fatalities over the course of the weekend. And crimes do exist. There are shootings in the county over the course of a year. But I say the last 2 weekends, no, because we turned on the TV and we heard so many people got shot in Chicago, so many people got shot in the city. And people think that is widespread on every street corner. And that, oh my God, I should stay in the house. Or if I go out at night, I'm in danger. If I go to any place, somebody's going to come by and shoot me. Well, look, you go any place, there's a risk that a building could fall on your head. What's the probability of the building falling down on your head? Very, very infinitesimal. So you go out and you have confidence that you can function without the building falling on your head, without you getting shot by some maniac who's out there trying to make a point. So I do think that the police have been successful in a suburban setting. It's much harder to do in an urban setting. And I salute, the men of the NYPD and the women who make their best effort to try to deal with what is a huge issue, a huge problem. But I think in Westchester, to this point, we're doing pretty well in managing it.
And the other Supreme Court big decision about abortion. This doesn't really change anything here in Westchester or around New York State.
Well, what they did in reversing Roe v. Wade is they said they leave it up to the states. So this state has acted so far to protect a woman's right to choose. However, don't kid yourself. What's coming next will be legislation. If the Republicans take over the House of Representatives and the Senate and the presidency, then they could pass a national law banning abortion. And that would be constitutional under the ruling that was given by the Supreme Court. So yes, it's left up to the states in the absence of the federal government having a universal action. And I think, what we've seen, quite frankly, are those people who are, conservative and on the right. They're pretty convinced that they're right. And they're pretty convinced that if they get the chance, they're going to do exactly what they want to do on issue after issue after issue. Because there were other Supreme Court decisions as well. They took away authority from the EPA to regulate things that affect greenhouse gases. And they said Congress must pass a law. Well, they know darn for well Congress passing law is difficult. You get the filibuster in the Senate. And that's why they kick it back, to Congress, because then you won't get swift regulatory action. And they don't want that. They don't want a robust government that can hold business in check. They want a suppliant government that will allow, a lot of entities to do whatever the heck they want to do. And so, look, I think, John, we have to be as practical minded as we can. We operate within the parameters of the laws above us. We'll do our job to defend the Constitution. That was the oath I took, and defend the Constitution of the state of New York, meaning the actions that we take will be consistent with the two state constitutions. And we'll see what people advocate on the outside as time goes along.
Here we are in the middle of summer, halfway through, and a lot more to go. You already alluded to the ethnic festivals back at the Kensico Dam Plaza in Valhalla, and Bicycle Sundays, of course, up and down the Bronx River Parkway from White Plains down to the Bronx border. A lot more going on around the county this summer, too.
Yeah, we're very fortunate. We've got a great park system here. And let me be clear, I didn't create the great park system. I inherited it when I walked in the door.
Kathleen O'Connor created it, right?
Right. Well, Kathy O'Connor gets a lot of credit for maintaining it. She's the commissioner of parks. And, of course, as I think people may or may not realize, when I came into office, it was a change in party administration, but I did not fire all the commissioners. Kathy O'Connor in Parks and Recreation was one of the many commissioners that I kept because she was capable and doing a good job, and she continues to do a good job. We've got such a diversity in recreation that we've got 6 public golf courses. Well, the golf courses almost never closed during COVID because golf is a socially distancing sport. You don't defend somebody or get close to them in golf. We kept the bicycle paths open, and we've improved them. The North County and South County trailways have been completely redone, and the Bronx River pathway has been connected so you could go straight through from Eastchester all the way up to White Plains. We have nature centers, 6 nature centers all across the county, in Cross River and in Yonkers, in North White Plains and Rye. And those nature centers, you walk around, you're by yourself, or you're with a loved one or with a family, and you can enjoy those things. So the high profile situations, the Kensico Dam Plazas of the world, represent a great meeting spot. And that's where we had our ethnic festivals. We restarted the ethnic festivals, and we've had 4 or 5 of them already. The African American, the Hispanic festival, the Irish American heritage event has happened, and there's a lot of others that have happened. And in the big picture, that's another sign of us coming back as a county. But we're very happy that we've got this kind of outreach. And in a lot of ways, the average taxpayer doesn't deal with the county police unless they get caught speeding on the hutch. The average person doesn't deal with the county corrections department until they or somebody in their family gets sent to jail. And ditto dealing with the probation department. You have to get out of jail to go to probation department. A lot of people don't interact directly with our Department of Environmental Facilities, which is the entity that treats sewerage. When you flush the toilet, you don't think about it. It's gone. And there's a lot that we do in Westchester County that's regional, local government, and it's necessary. And you don't think about it. It's not that critical. The parks are something that you see and experience. That is a proactive program. And, so far, so good. And we got a long way to go, but we keep plugging away at making improvements in the parks and maintaining the parks so that you can enjoy them.
County Executive Latimer, we thank you for joining us here on Westchester Talk Radio. Enjoy the rest of your summer, and let's talk again soon.
Pleasure, John. You have a great summer.
You too. Our thanks again to County Executive George Latimer for joining us here on Westchester Talk Radio. Cup of Joe Political Show. I'm John Marino. We are produced by Sharc Creative, and we are made possible by Robeson Oil, the house that service built. By Michael Labriola, landscape design and construction of Armonk. Also by Hightower Westchester, managing your wealth through a fiduciary standard. And by Jaguar Land Rover of New Rochelle, White Plains, and Mount Kisco. Catch all of our Westchester, Rockland, Putnam, Dutchess, Orange, and Fairfield County Talk Radio programming on our YouTube channel, Sharc Creative YouTube. Download our app Take it with you 24/7, 365, every place you go. It's called Westchester Talk. And now we are on Apple Podcasts too. And for our summer movie screening series, Screenings Under the Stars, go to our website, westchestertalkradio.com, and find out all you need to know.